The critics know nothing.
Damn, that was way better than the first movie, huh?
4 stars! Oh my Godzilla, yes! Had a great time from start to finish.
You guys have been wanting me to rip Rotten Tomatoes a new one for this, so let's get into it. The critics hate Godzilla King of the Monsters. The fans love it.
Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019 is great.
Hey, look on the bright side. At least I didn't keep you waiting as long as Legendary has with the Godzilla vs. King Kong trailer, because, oof, oh boy, I'm still waiting on that one. Anyhow, they track Godzilla down to the Arctic as they find out that's where Mother and Millie Bobby Brown are. We then catch up with Mother and Millie Bobby Brown with the terrorists as they then land in the Arctic, heading into the Monarch outpost to awaken none other than King Ghidorah. Now, the pacing moves very fast for this moment in time with the film, and the build-up is actually really done well. But on another note, the violence with the human characters always gets cut off. Like, come on, this movie's PG-13, act like it. Maybe if you were to cut back on so much of the language and really dumb jokes.
That bitch.
Gotta be fucking kidding.
Then you could include a little more on-screen violence if you were so worried about ratings, but whatever. They then go into the outpost with a really dumb exchange between Millie Bobby Brown and Charles Dance. They make it down deeper into the outpost as Charles Dance and the terrorists set up mines to detonate and awaken King Ghidorah. And I'll admit, the reveal of King Ghidorah trapped in ice was a little chilling. Kill me. Jokes aside, it's actually pretty cool, and the music is fucking glorious. Bear McCreary, god damn! Also, what the fuck is with Millie Bobby Brown name-dropping the monster she encounters? It's a little cheesy and also very annoying and out of place, I guess. I don't really know how to explain this, but I just don't like it at all. I mean, you could try doing the name drops in a more dramatic way than just looking at something at all and then say the name. Anyone else getting flashbacks to that one shitty sequel that came out not too long ago, or is it just me? However, back with Dad and Monarch, once they find out why Godzilla is going to the Arctic, their introduction of Ghidorah, or as we the fans like to call him, Monster Zero, is fucking bullshit. They just pull up all these fucking files of documented photos of ancient dragon stories of hydras and other creatures alike at the ready. Keep this technique in mind as they do this a lot in this film to explain shit. And as they explain this along the way to the Arctic, they're inside this highly advanced stealth bomber and they drop out of the hangar thing. Okay, this is the dumbest thing possible. Not only are they on a ridiculously advanced ship, but they're dropping out from the bottom in MV-22s like fucking flies. I'm no expert, but I don't think that's how physics or gravity works with these things. But whatever, this is a Godzilla movie. The terrorists prepare for the landing of Monarch and Dad as they set up an ambush and finish setting up the mines to wake up Ghidorah. Dad and the rest of Monarch lands with Shiats leading the way and Dad eventually making his way behind. And the ambush comes into play, but here's the thing. They wait for almost a solid few seconds before firing when they know they're being ambushed. They're literally given enough time to react, yet the terrorists still get the jump on them. Anyway, Dad makes his way through the outpost and manages to find Mother and Millie Bobby Brown as hostages. Meanwhile, Commando Lady manages to get a position where she can take out Charles Dance and end all of this. Dad confronts the rest of his family, although something isn't exactly right in this moment. Dad encourages Millie Bobby Brown to come with them as they can both go home and escape all of this. But here's the thing, right? Even though Dad has a gun pointed at the terrorists and Commando Lady has eyes on Charles Dance and everyone literally has the advantage on these guys, Millie Bobby Brown backs away from Dad to stay with Mother, and Mother immediately tells Dad to run as she blows the charges to awake King Ghidorah. What the absolute fuck? Even if Commando Lady couldn't get the shot, she still had the advantage on them without them knowing, and Dad's even pointing a gun at them anyway for good measure. That was literally her chance to get to safety, and what she says later in the film doesn't help anything. What the absolute fuck were the writers thinking? So the charges go off with the terrorists leaving ahead of Monarch as Dad and the rest of the squad nearly escape the collapsing outpost. What would be more beneficial for this entire sequence are much more wider shots. Also, I forgot to mention this, but remember when I said something about the outside material not helping, i.e. the Monarch timeline? Yeah, Ghidorah is almost 3 times the size of Godzilla, and based on the scale of him shown through the cinematography, I highly doubt this entire outpost took 3 years to complete since 2016, let alone I highly doubt it took 2 years. Other than that, I don't give a shit about the outside material. Mother and Millie Bobby Brown leave Dad behind. Mother goes to use the Orca and awaken Ghidorah officially. Bear this in mind, what comes straight out of Millie Bobby Brown's mouth is absolutely retarded.
We can't leave him.
Bitch, you left him behind. You had the opportunity to leave the terrorists' grasp, and you chose to stay with them for whatever fucking reason. So it's your own damn fault, woman. After sending off a signal from the Orca, King Ghidorah rises from his icy grave in a glorious manner. Terrifying music, great atmosphere, fucking amazing music, and an awesome presentation. Did I mention the music? I would be genuinely surprised, or rather impressed at this scene, if I hadn't spoiled myself with that 5-minute trailer back in April. So yeah, I kinda ruined the movie for myself in a way. And good God, that fucking lighting is not good at all when you look at the details.
Learn how to light your CGI, you hack!
Yes, thank you, Jobby. So Monarch begins to open fire on Ghidorah as the Golden Dragon blasts them with electrifying beams. I'm really glad they did his actual beams, to be honest. Mother and Millie Bobby Brown leave, and Ghidorah is left meddling with Monarch. And seriously, as much bashing around as Ghidorah does to these guys in their helicopters, they should be dead. Not any of this love tapping or whatever. A giant fucking dragon shoving them around with ice breaking beneath them, and not a single person comes out scratched up, nearly escaping at best, but Jesus fucking Christ, show some goddamn blood or bruises around the people. Also, throughout the scene, I love the fact how Ghidorah is already established to have individual thinking heads. Like Kevin, for example. Fucking Kevin. And in all of this chaos, it really does show how Michael Dougherty treated Ghidorah with care. I enjoyed this entire sequence the most. But then Ghidorah backs off as on the radar, which still works in this busted ship, as something rather large is coming. And remember how I mentioned Godzilla's introduction before was underwhelming? Holy fuckballs, never mind. That just went from 0 to 100 real quick. So Godzilla and Ghidorah begin clashing it out as the fight between the two seems fucking entertaining at a glance, and we do get relatively low angles to really show their size, but all of that can sadly be undermined just from the artificial shaky cam, the constant cutting back to the humans, the overabundance of smoke, snow, and so much covering the CGI, and the movements aren't exactly slow enough. Now, it moves fine, but it's not quite there yet. On a side note, with all of the human elements, everyone should be fucking dead during all this crashing around in motion. Like seriously, Ghidorah should kill them when he's playing around with them, and they should be crushed from Godzilla walking around. God damn, this movie. The fighting between these two icons is rather awesome with such great music. I honestly had a blast with the scene, although it would be nice to watch without cutting back to the fucking dumb humans. The reason why I don't care about these humans is because we're not given enough time to care for them, other than the standard amount for Dad, and I guess Serizawa. Also, not to mention, a main character dies during all of this, which is unfortunate, but nobody cares. We didn't have an attachment to Asian lady anyway. Hell, Serizawa seemed really bummed out about this, so I'm guessing she was his daughter or something? I don't know, and I don't care. She's gone now. As Godzilla and Ghidorah continue duking it out, the advanced stealth bomber Deus Ex Machina its way to save everyone. Ghidorah flees, Dad is knocked unconscious by the missiles, and Godzilla roars to fade to black. And I absolutely despise how this scene ended. Fade to blacks I personally hate, and the first fight was entertaining, but as I mentioned, too much cutting to the human characters, shaky cam, and improper lighting where you can barely see a thing. Kind of ironic considering the previous film. And let me explain. Though you couldn't see jack shit in the previous film, it had natural lighting. Plus, in the final battle, there was zero light because the power was out from the Muto's EMPs. Here, the light's artificial and stylistic in a way that makes it easy to see the action, but it's hard to see the details, and occasionally it looks really dull and unnatural. I'm not a big fan of oversaturation, and stylistic lighting like this isn't appealing to watch, but when it's done sparingly and done right, then I can get behind it. Though most of the shots in this film may look beautiful and give this film its own style, it's overused and it gets very annoying. Anyway, Dad should be dead instead of unconscious, but plot armor, and as mentioned, we fade to black to the next scene. Dad then wakes up in a hospital bed with his regular clothes on, no one's attending him, and apparently he has 3 hearts. Like seriously, what the fuck is this thing monitoring? The same effect to be seen in the next shot. And then we find out that, wait, So it was Sally Hawkins who died? Seriously? Okay, in a nutshell, that's how fucked this movie is. It's sad that I can't tell who died in that scene, and she's a character from the previous film. What the fuck? That's just terrible for me to confuse the death of a character with someone we literally just met, and who also offers absolutely nothing to any of the situations.
That bitch.
Then again, almost none of these characters offer any importance other than to just shout cliche commands, references, and spit out exposition. They are walking tools and not even remotely close to being characters.
And I do not understand why the characters are robots.
Yes, thank you, Stuckman. Now fuck off. Also, apparently they have a fucking submarine somehow following Godzilla. How the fuck? Again, how does Monarch have all of this? How do they even have the capability after literally being on the brink of shutdown and needing help from the US military jurisdiction from the last film? Continuity, guys, come on!
So everyone's on an advanced stealth bomber heading to a volcano in Mexico that's about to blow, but then we are interrupted by a transmission by Mother. How exactly she managed to contact this ship, I have no fucking clue. Everyone has access to everything in this movie without any issue, apparently. Which begs the question of how stable is anything Monarch owns. The Arctic outpost was easily taken over, and so was the Mothra outpost at the beginning. A good chunk of their technology is easily hacked as shown, damaged, or even stolen, and yet you mean to tell me they have this advanced technology running perfectly? I'm sorry, but fuck off. If you have this much of an advancement, then you better fucking have it tied down of any flaws, but then again, we're dealing with absolute idiots just like any other monster movie. Fuck, did Ridley Scott take over at some point? So Mother explains how the death of their son, Andrew, caused her motivations to awaken Ghidorah as soon all of the titans around the world, swearing that she would find a solution to overpopulation, war, pollution, and destruction. How does awakening these fucking titans help any of that? Literally moments later in this film, everything the titans do backfires majorly against her. It just goes to show how fucking stupid that would be. Also, how the fuck is she playing footage at the same time she's speaking on a live broadcast? It's not the Joker from The Dark Knight where it was sent in and easily could have been edited. Not to mention, she uses footage from the fucking 2012 Comic-Con test footage. Are you really fucking kidding me right now? Jesus Christ. Everything else she says is a cliche speech about how humanity is an affection to Earth. Fuck off. And I kid you not, she brings up the example that the radiation of these titans will bring new life and that life will carry on. How do I need to drag this out any further? This debate is repeated, and wait, Monarch's still on the verge of shutdown? How? How? 5 fucking years and they have advanced technology beyond our reality, and you mean to tell me they're still on the verge of shutdown? Fuck off. Dad doesn't take this too kindly as any sane person would. It is then revealed on Mother's side that she is the one who came to Charles Dance for help in order to begin this entire operation. I'm sorry, but fuck off yet again. She literally risked the lives of her colleagues and the people she has personally worked with for however long just to free Mothra and awaken Ghidorah and then eventually Rodan. Dad and the others then arrive to a Mexico volcano that's about to blow, finally. We also get some brief exposition as to what the next Titan will awaken. Rodan, the fire demon. Sweet! The alpha call from the Orca is then broadcasted across the land as Rodan finally awakened. By the way, while all of this is happening, Monarch issues an evacuation of the city during all of this chaos. Allow me to clarify, Monarch is issuing the evacuation, not the fucking military, not the fucking government, or authority to this city. Monarch. In what universe does the Cinematic Universe organization have control over governments? That seems rather alarming. I mean, they did walk right out of a fucking Senate meeting without any consequences. Who the fuck is in charge of anything anymore? Who has real power? It's not like they're S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Avengers where they can just drop in at any point and save the day whenever they felt like it. Does Michael Daugherty even know how evacuations work? Every Godzilla film covers this, so he better fucking know. Jesus Christ, this movie's making me lose some brain cells. And later on in this sequence, I highly doubt they managed to save this entire city on board this fucking stealth bomber. So Rodan finally awakens, and not gonna lie, the build up to his appearance gave me slight chills. The cinematography and power behind this is nearly there, but yet again, not quite. And for the love of God, stop with the shaky cam and documentary zoom in on the monsters. We find out that a storm is on its way straight for Rodan. Finding out how this is possible is beyond me, as the best way to explain it is that, yes, Ghidorah is on his way. While I find it interesting that Ghidorah can create these storms on his own because of his alien origins, it's still a cheap way to hide the CGI with rain effects, snow, debris, and whatever else.
That means it's coming for food, a fight, or something more intimate.
Oh, fuck off, Dartery. So they begin firing away at Rodan, and keep in mind these are jets from the stealth bomber. So Monarch had access to fucking fighter jets, apparently. Great plausibility. Rodan then flies off and destroys all of the city below, with a select few of civilians barely surviving. And so our badass chase begins with Rodan's glory going straight for King Ghidorah. Remember how I said this film shares some similarities to the Jurassic World films? I wasn't joking. They literally have heart monitors on the soldiers flying the jet fighters. For the love of God, can Jurassic Park and Godzilla stop circle jerking each other off and just be their own stories? Rodan collides with Ghidorah's terrifying yet awesome entrance. And I'll admit, this fight between the two is honestly terrifying. That is, if it weren't for so much fucking cutting back and forth between the fight and the characters. As all this happens, a helicopter filled with evacuees is coming in hot, although the hangar doors on the stealth bomber are jammed. First off, why the fuck are they even going back to the stealth bomber, let alone to the fucking monsters that are fighting in the storm? Second off, they could just stay in the city to avoid the conflict. Actually, now volcanic ash is a thing. Never mind, I'm dumb.
But still though, I can guarantee they have at least a couple more options, right? At least something else. Speaking of which, where did the others go? Is this the only helicopter with survivors trying to escape? Who knows? I was too busy looking at Rodan's presentation. Sorry. So Rodan's shot down by Ghidorah while the stealth bomber still struggles to open the hangar. But then Ghidorah notices them and starts to chase them. The evacuees make it in just on time now. And right before the Golden Dragon can make his attack, Godzilla Deus Ex Machina is right on time to attack. And dear God, this fight is actually kind of brutal, not gonna lie. I'm enjoying all of this. And in the heat of situation, Army Man broadcasts randomly onto the advanced stealth bomber with ease, just like Mother did. He announces to everyone and the audience that scientists developed a new weapon more powerful than the H-bomb, the Oxygen Destroyer, and is immediately shot into the ocean to kill both monsters. We then get a brief moment that, wait a minute, hold up, what the fuck? The Oxygen Destroyer comes in out of fucking nowhere without any explanation at all? That's what's been teased to us?
All of those sounds that are trapped in your mind.
Motherfucker! So you really mean to tell me that the only thing able to kill Godzilla comes out of fucking nowhere without any explanation, no build-up, no mention until the last minute, and never to be brought up again for the rest of the movie?
You fucking pie.
No shit, the military has been talking about killing Godzilla, but this just comes out of fucking nowhere in the heat of a very tense situation. How the fuck did this dude even contact the ship? Let alone, how the fuck does he even know what they're up to? Was anyone even aware of this thing at all before? How did they even develop this in the first place? Jesus fucking Christ! The greatest weapon of all time in the history of Godzilla is brought in for not even 5 minutes and does absolutely nothing for the story, other than just to wipe Godzilla out of the picture for stupid plot reasons and the absolute most pointless and disgraceful Easter egg. And out of everything in this entire film, this is the one fucking thing that pissed me off the most. A powerful weapon made completely pointless in the end. What would have worked better is if there was some reference at the beginning of the movie, some build-up, something to give a form of foreshadowing, anything at all. Not out of the fucking blue that fucks everything up. Are people really this fucking stupid in movies nowadays? Because this dick face totally fucked the world up without even having the slightest clue. It would be better if the Oxygen Destroyer was replacing the fucking Orchard machine. Maybe act as a plan B if a Ghidorah didn't work. Hell, make it a weapon this group of terrorists have been wanting to get their hands on. The Oxygen Destroyer should have been something so much more to this film, and not just something lazily thrown in last minute just to further the story and nothing else. Because we can't have Godzilla kill Ghidorah until the last 10 minutes of the movie. I mean, so much for the we would be his pet statement, because that's blown out of the question. You know what? Let's just move the fuck on. Fuck this scene, fuck this movie, fuck you, Dartery, and fuck the writing. So Godzilla's heart rate dies off, and Serizawa gives this exchange to Dad.
Looks like you got yours, Mug.
I'm sorry, but what exactly did Dad ever do to you? Yeah, he's mentioned about how Godzilla should be dead, but he didn't do jack shit in this entire film. He's just along for the ride. The fucking military is responsible for this stupidity. They're the ones that literally broadcasted a weapon more powerful than the fucking hydrogen bomb and launched it in the very next minute. You should be angry with that fucker. He even aided Monarch in the first film when it was needed. You should be more pissed off with him than the fucking father of an unstable family. Anyway, Ghidorah flies out with the missing head and then the next minute regenerates it right back. Now, this new addition to Ghidorah, I absolutely love. It really sells on his alien origins, which we talk about momentarily. So Ghidorah sits on top of Rodan's volcano as he lets out the alpha call of the century, calling for all the titans around the world to wake up and go on a rampage. Now we get to see some of these titans wake up, but the rest of the time they're just red glowing dots on a monitor screen for the rest of the movie. Seriously? Well, that's one way to say budget, I suppose. No, this is lazy. Show the fucking titans destroying city. Give us a little montage, at least something, and not just a monitor screen showing what's going on, because that's just lazy. It doesn't give off any tension whatsoever. Show, don't fucking tell. And while this all goes on, Rodan bows down before Ghidorah and... Okay, this is by far the most hilarious yet retarded thing I could ever witness. The monster's bowing is stupid, and we'll talk more about that much later on, don't you worry, but mother of God, they did not give two shits when making this movie. Oh, wait. So yeah, Mother's plan backfired on her as both Charles Dance and Millie Bobby Brown fucking hate her for her stupidity. But at least Mothra comes back into play. Oh yeah, she's a thing. I forgot to mention she flees to Cocoon under a waterfall. And holy shit, her second introduction is fucking glorious. Remember what I said about the monster's introductions? I actually take it back. I can't make my mind up just like this movie. So anyway, we then cut back to Mother and Millie Bobby Brown, with Millie Bobby Brown trying to avoid Mother for being a fucking retard as any sane person would do. Also, Millie Bobby Brown's look is inconsistent from the scene we saw her before. Are we missing a scene movie? Also, Millie Bobby Brown uses Andrew against Mother because of her dumb motivations to save the world or whatever. We then cut back to Dad and Asian Lady as we get some backstory of Asian Lady through digital files and rather lazy but kinda heartwarming references to the Mothra twin fairies. There you go, G-fans, just what we wanted, right? No. We finally get an explanation to Ghidorah's origins as he is not a part of this natural order. By the magic of digital files and easy to miss lines, Ghidorah is revealed to be an alien. Fuck this movie. Everything covering Ghidorah down to the very detail is explained within the span of these 2 minutes. Hey, Dory, do you know anything about writing or build up throughout your movie? Earning dramatic effect and not using cheap ways? I would keep going on this, but this movie is just losing my interest and is so fucking frustrating. They then return to the underwater-based outpost as Army Man is waiting for them, revealing that the entire world is being attacked through, once again, monitors and digital files. Like, can we please be in the moment with these monsters while they're attacking? That way we can feel the tension. Seriously, make up your mind. Do you want this to be a dumb cliche movie or a fucking monster movie? You see, this is the biggest problem with this film. It has no balance, no time, and it just keeps moving on constantly despite its runtime. And even then, the main focus of this entire film is just around Ghidorah, Godzilla, Mothra, and Rodan. Yet, despite that, they still have to shove in 17 of these motherfuckers. Jesus Christ, this film. We then get a plan from Dad that if they stop Ghidorah, they stop the rest of the monsters from attacking. Oh, gee, I guess we couldn't figure that out, huh? Not sure how that would work if those Mutos were still alive in the previous film, because they sure as hell didn't respond to Godzilla as an alpha. And now that I think of it, you wonder why I don't mention Godzilla so much in this review, right? It's because he's barely in his own fucking movie. I guess that's standard Godzilla tradition, or monster tradition. The military then realized that they fucked up. Once again, another Godzilla tradition. The incompetence of the military seems like it plagued Godzilla forever. We then cut to Mother and Charles Dance arguing over a plan to fix things as, again, her plan backfired big time. Meanwhile, Millie Bobby Brown sits in one of the broadcast rooms figuring out what specific bunker they're at. Turns out, it's Boston, and she looks over a family photo on the iPad. Keep both of these details in mind. We cut yet again back to Dad and everyone else. Dad is planning on leaving on his own to find his family until Mothra interrupts and hovers above the outpost using her god rays, blinding everyone with her beauty. They then figure out that the reason why she's even here is that our humans can figure out that Godzilla is still alive and right below them. So Mothra is just basically here as a prop, or rather our beacon, not the queen of monsters, thank you very much. Also, what is with people shipping Godzilla and Mothra together? That doesn't even remotely look like it can work, now can it? Intersemiotic or interspecies or whatever, I don't care. It just, We then also find out that Monarch is holding nukes. And to clarify, not the military, Monarch, because Dad directly addresses Serizawa, not Army Man. So you really mean to tell me that Monarch is holding onto nukes? Good God, what the fuck were they planning to use them for? That seems highly dangerous, don't you think? But no, they're gonna be shut down supposedly, so it doesn't matter, I guess. They then sail out into the middle of the ocean on a submarine to the bottom of the ocean, eventually figuring out that the Hollow Earth does exist, proving how Godzilla travels through tunnels is correct. Also, I almost completely forgot about this, but there is actually a genuinely well-grounded character moment between Serizawa and Dad about making peace and time. This is one of those scenes that could stick out if given a little more dramatic effect to them, and of course, time to really sell on their characters. I'd say this is the best character moment out of the entire film on a deeper analysis than compared to others as quickly this film moves on. That is until Serizawa makes the racist joke that he came up with a quote from a goddamn fortune cookie. That little joke ruins this entire scene. Fuck off, Dartery. The moment is immediately interrupted by the submarine getting pulled into the Hollow Earth via vortex. Again, I have no idea how they managed to survive any of this because we cut right back to Millie Bobby Brown trying to escape the bunker, while stealing the Orca back with a plan of her own. Remember how I mentioned security earlier, but with the Monarch staff? Yeah, the terrorists don't have it either, as Millie Bobby Brown slips right on by them, regaining possession of the Orchard and leaving immediately after. You think that the one machine they want to keep at all costs should be heavily guarded, but no, plot reasons. And at the same time, we get a quick clip of a character moment of Millie Bobby Brown looking through a vent to see Mother crying over her mistakes, despite the fact that she's a little too fucking deep to even be redeemed, which we'll get back to towards the end of this movie, hint, hint. And while Millie Bobby Brown escapes by literally walking right on out with no one even stopping her, I'll admit the cinematography in this one moment looks beautiful in the sense of atmosphere. And this is one of the rarest occasions of natural lighting, and you know what? It looks better than the rest of the film. Maybe a little bit of Gareth Edwards' vision rubbed off. We are then shown that Washington is literally flooded and on fucking fire with Ghidorah controlling the weather. Not exactly sure how I'm supposed to feel because I don't feel any tension from this, awe, or anything to grab me. It's just a cool visual with a cool concept that didn't have enough time nor proper execution to take in, because immediately after we cut right back to Dad and the others making their way through the Hollow Earth. Eventually they make their way into the Hollow Earth, finding Godzilla's temple of worship. Right from the start they release a couple of probes from the submarine. The fucking technology at this point is just laughable. And once again, I'll admit, this scene of them wandering through the temple gives some really nice shots setting up the temple's scale and design, but then that can be dropped by cutting right back to Millie Bobby Brown again in the middle of Boston, setting up the Orchard for broadcast at a local stadium. Not sure how she managed to get by all of the evacuees and military, but you know, plot reasons. And then we just cut right back to Dad and the others. Who edit this? Who? Who did it? Whose job do I need to replace? Holy fuck! Okay, we're staying at the temple. Everyone halts at a distance away from Godzilla because of the levels of radiation are ridiculously high. So instead, they send in the probes like any competent human would, only to find out that they themselves can't survive in this condition. Although they did get a brief glimpse of Godzilla before going offline. They then debate on how they're going to be able to reach Godzilla, as this now does seem impossible. Only for Serizawa the next minute to take the sacrifice himself to set up the nuclear warhead. First off, why? Secondly, what connection does he have to Godzilla? And no, the prequel comics don't help shit. And the first film, he didn't have much connection except for staring intensely in the distance or talking about how Godzilla is the savior. Thirdly, how the fuck does Serizawa even survive getting to Godzilla if the fucking probes couldn't even get close before being destroyed? This logic makes no sense. Kinda reminds me of Optimus Prime's power in Dark of the Moon. Remember that movie, anyone? Fucking hell, this scene makes no goddamn sense. It's not even plausible anymore. Ghidorah as an alien, I'll accept as a fan, but this, no. Anyway, Serizawa marches up to Godzilla and sets the nuclear warhead to blow, saying one final goodbye to Godzilla as they stare into each other's eyes like one friend to another. Again, what's their connection? How the fuck is Serizawa not even dead yet? He literally takes off his fucking mask to see Godzilla with his own eyes. It's not like Darth Vader and Luke from Return of the Jedi. That at least made sense in terms of context of the world and situation. Yes, Serizawa is about to die, but how is he not boiling alive? Sandra from the first film had radiation suit on, and it was clearly stated 5 minutes with or without. And that radiation leak is absolutely nothing to the radiation of the fucking Earth's core. So how the fuck is he not insta-dead? They even mentioned what I'm talking about. Even if they launched the nuke from the submarine, how would they get out? It's a fucking nuke. They won't be able to outrun it at all in a fucking submarine of all things. Also, Serizawa beforehand handed Dad his notes. Why him specifically, I don't know. I just don't know. So the nuke blows up. Serizawa dies. Everyone escapes to Hollow Earth safely. And from the way they do, they should also be dead after the instant change in pressure. And Godzilla is rejuvenated to full energy. Mothra is gone for some reason, and Godzilla blows his beam into the sky for a call to arms. And thus, the battle for the true alpha finally begins. And once again, Bear McCree is possibly by far the greatest decision Michael Dougherty has made in his career. And you may be wondering why I'm not talking more in depth of this moment once Godzilla is resurrected. Well, it's because I genuinely fucking love this scene. The time it's given, the music, the visuals, the goddamn CGI, surprisingly, and the interaction only has one word of dialogue. Huh, no shit, I guess Dougherty does have potential. Now, before I forget, while Serizawa was setting up for his seppuku, Mother finds out that the Orchid was stolen as the broadcast from the stadium stops all of the Titans in their track and pisses off Ghidorah. So she packs up her bags in order to go find her daughter, because family means everything, even if you're the most heartless and dumb person in the world. You go, girl. Charles Dance says otherwise until he is held at gunpoint and then rightfully says fuck it and lets her go. And that's the end of his character arc. Absolutely nothing. What a worthless use of a potentially badass character. Thanks, Dougherty. You just reminded me of your ridiculous directing. Cutting back to Dad and the others for a moment, they manage to track where Godzilla is going to Boston, along with Ghidorah and Rodan and also the Orchid. Convenient, and not in terms of location, but just how they managed to find out somehow. Not only that, but they also managed to find that missing piece that Mother used on the Orchid. Homo sapiens. That's right. The true alphas of the Earth. In what way does any form of a fucking kaiju care about the humans other than Godzilla? Which I guess explains why he isn't affected by the Orchid's broadcast, because part of it was mixed with his roars also.
Creatures just think it's another apex predator. Yeah, that's real poetic. Now what?
Okay, glad to know this film is self-aware half the time. If only that took the work off my hands for writing all of this, but this review exists. Now we cut back to Millie Bobby Brown back in Boston broadcasting the alpha call as Ghidorah arrives. She nearly escapes thanks to some plot armor. Seriously, how the fuck do these beams not have any effect on her? God damn, these are some invincible characters. She makes it out. The Orchid is supposedly destroyed under Ghidorah's foot, and the Ghidorah and Millie Bobby Brown see each other face to face for the first time. Millie Bobby Brown screams, like that'll do any good, as Ghidorah charges up, but then Deus Ex Machina, a blue blast, pushes Ghidorah back, and I'll admit, this introduction to the final battle is executed flawlessly. Godzilla arrives to kick Ghidorah's ass as the two giants finally clash together. Okay, fine. Everyone is finally in Boston for the final battle. It's then revealed that Godzilla's radiation levels are going to blow within 12 minutes, and I actually timed this, but they're a minute late on this time frame. But that doesn't matter. It's a Godzilla movie. So Dad and Oshia have to go down to the field trying to find Millie Bobby Brown and the Orchid. They make it down there during the heated battle, and somehow by a miracle, they manage to find the Orchid, although it was literally shown to be crushed beneath a fucking kaiju's foot. Okay. A jet crashes into the field, destroying the helicopter they landed with and further pushing the events along. This lady pilot is shown to have a shard of glass in her leg, yet no one else shares a single scar. Glad to know our main characters are invincible. But then, surprise, surprise, right before the monsters are about to crush our characters, Deus Ex Machina, Mothra arrives in the fight and webs up Ghidorah against a building. Okay, here's an issue. This is our first full reveal of Mothra in her second form. She's been in 2 other scenes, yet in the heat of battle, she's finally revealed. Wouldn't it have been beneficial to have Mothra revealed what she actually looks like after using her god rays and then flying off to get a head start in the battle? Actually, if the monsters are the focus and they're really banging on this Godzilla and Mothra relationship, how about we replace the positions of Millie Bobby Brown with Mothra? Mothra arrives early to the battle facing off against Ghidorah, but then Godzilla is the one who saves Mothra instead of saving Millie Bobby Brown. Then the stakes are risen once Rodan finally arrives and obliterates Mothra. Wouldn't this change make a little more sense? Wouldn't it also be more interesting to see how Godzilla and Rodan fight at some point? Because these two don't even interact with each other at all. Rodan's a bitch, man. Moving on, Godzilla, Ghidorah, Mothra, and then finally Rodan all fight it out with a tag team match. And this entire sequence has some fucking amazing moments. Godzilla pushing Ghidorah through a building, Mothra and Rodan gliding around, Ghidorah literally choke slamming the king, and then this fucking beaut of a scene. Holy fuck. But then Deus Ex Machina again, back with our characters. Mother shows up out of nowhere to save everyone. Okay, how'd she even get into the stadium driving a Jeep with all this chaos going on? There's fucking rubble in the way, you know? Fuck it, the movie's almost over. Let's move on. They get into the Jeep with the Orchard and drive around the city aimlessly trying to find Millie Bobby Brown. All the while, Mother and Dad argue about losing Millie Bobby Brown, and it's not until Oshia asks this remark.
If I had the two of you for parents, I'd run away from home too. Home.
Okay, fuck off. 1, how would they know this, and how could they be sure of this? 2, you really mean to tell me that this quick moment of humor is what stops them to realize this in the middle of a fucking monster battle? 3, Millie Bobby Brown just so happens to stumble upon her old house when the door is conveniently unlocked for her to get inside. Everything's just a fucking convenience, isn't it? So Millie Bobby Brown hides in her house while Mother and Dad make their way to her. Godzilla and Ghidorah continue duking it out in the background until the beauty of a scene happens. Also, I'm not sure how every jet in the area blows up, but not the giant stealth bomber. God damn this movie. Also, Mothra manages to stun Rodan for the rest of the movie, now making the mighty bird the bitch of the skies. Mother and Dad finally find Millie Bobby Brown in a tub that's completely untouched, and she turns out to be fine. Yay! How the fuck is her hand not even, like, you know, broken at this point? Whatever. Anyway, Ghidorah stomps onto Godzilla as they both rise up into the sky as Ghidorah drops Godzilla to his death. And one issue I have with the effects during all of this, in terms of consistency anyway, is Ghidorah's size. I can't tell if Godzilla's meant to look bigger or if Ghidorah is, because Ghidorah's movements are way too fucking fast and don't really have enough gravity to them. Physics I'm not even gonna bother with in this movie. We all know exactly why. But anyway, Godzilla's dropped to his death and weakened. Everyone stands from afar and watches as Mothra stands in the way of Ghidorah to defend Godzilla. Mothra sacrifices herself as she always does, and then her essence falls upon Godzilla to absorb. And yes, I'm going to accept that, assuming that what Godzilla absorbed is her radiation, which Ghidorah then slides on in to steal. Mother, Dad, and Millie Bobby Brown all come together while the battle continues as they somehow Deus Ex Machina again and fix the Orca. They try to escape, but not before Mother makes the call to stay behind with the Orca to drive Ghidorah away from her family. Not exactly sure why this decision was made. She could have just left the Orca and they could have flown off to safety while Ghidorah was distracted by the Orca for control. But no. They split their paths as Ghidorah slowly, and I mean slowly, chases after this one tiny Jeep Mother is in. Despite the fact that Ghidorah can literally fly 600 miles per hour, he's still too short for delivering the killing blow until he finally does. Mother survives this blast at first, just so she can crawl right on out and deliver this line.
Long live the king.
And then she dies. Okay, there's no redemption for you. You don't even deserve it at all. You literally released Titans for the sake of saving the world cliche. Literally everything that has happened is your fault, and you should not be forgiven that easily. Maybe on the basis of family between Millie Bobby Brown and Dad, but from the audience standpoint, you fucking suck, woman. Immediately after, the city begins to literally melt from Godzilla's new form, and holy fucking shit, they actually pulled it off. Burning Godzilla. So the final battle begins with Godzilla flawlessly obliterating Ghidorah. And holy shit, what the absolute fuck is this? This looks terrible. Why did this make it to the final cut? This needs some form of work, because dear god, that CG does not look good. And once again, I can't tell Ghidorah's actual scale, whether it's larger or the same size as Godzilla. And whenever Godzilla did these blasts, you could hear Mothra. So does that mean it was Mothra's spirit Godzilla absorbed and not her radiation, or what exactly? Because none of that makes any sense, but god damn this fucking movie. Keep calm, it's almost over. So all of Boston is completely leveled from a blast larger than a nuke now, really showing the true power of Godzilla. Everyone witnesses the ending of this battle as they fly away, and they say they're happy Godzilla is on their side. For now, supposedly. There! The human characters are done. We're done here. Back to the monsters. So the dust settles to reveal that Ghidorah is still alive, only then to be faked out as Godzilla is just chomping down on one of the heads and blasts it out of existence. And right after that, the effects are actually starting to pull its weight. This is another rare instance where the CG actually looks good, for this one specific moment anyway. I can actually see it where there's barely any smoke, great lighting, and a perfect detail. Just like with Godzilla's resurrection, if only the rest of the film was like that. Finally, when the dust settles, it's revealed that the Titans from around the world appear to bow down before Godzilla. 5 of them anyway, to include Rodan. Motherfucker, there's 17 of these things around the world, and yet only a few of them show up in the end? Fuck off. And they bow down to their true king. Which reminds me, And I don't understand this, but why the fuck is a goddamn Muto bowing when those fuckers didn't even bother in the last film? And they gave Godzilla a hard time there. And somehow, Rodan survived. Not only getting stabbed through the fucking chest with a literal gaping hole, but he somehow managed to survive all 3 of Godzilla's blasts. Because that completely leveled almost all of Boston. And may I remind you, it took a couple of those to fucking kill Ghidorah. How the fuck is Rodan still in one piece? So the monsters bow, and the movie ends with Godzilla roaring as we then cut to credits. And finally, the fucking title. So that's where it's been hiding. While we're here talking about the credits, I do find it funny that the monsters are credited as themselves. Bear McCreary's score is fucking badass. Also, it was really touching to see Michael Dougherty give an in memory for Haru Nakajima. As for the post-credit scene, I don't fucking care. It was cool, I guess, but it's just leading to a movie that doesn't exist, hasn't been greenlit, or may never be made. God damn it, all that footage of the panning to Skull Island should have led to Kong's reaction or something. Not a fucking cave painting, and not a goddamn pointless post-credit scene. Ugh. Alright, so that was Godzilla King of the Monsters. We still have a few more things to go over as a basic summary. Music was fantastic, every frame from this film is visually stunning and simply beautiful. The monsters are fucking amazing. The action is put together really well, for the most part. The acting was pretty decent, although not the best in other areas. The sound design was phenomenal, and this film really did take to heart the issues they had with Godzilla 2014 and really fixed them. And that's about the last I could say that is good. The effects on the monsters are not exactly the best, and in every shot they are always skewed in one form of rain, snow, smoke, water, fire, or another form of lighting to hide the imperfections and look less realistic. As I pointed out, this film did not look finished. Now the effects are passable, but with a budget of 200 million plus, it should really be top notch. When the trailers hit for this film, I was worried about the monsters being covered in rain and smoke every time, and my worries were never put to rest. There is not a single moment that exists with natural lighting anywhere in this, except for the select few I've already pointed out, of course. Everything is overly saturated, brightly lit, skewed in CG effects, shaky cam that doesn't even look good during some of the fights, and there were so many effects reused in this film. Not just the stock footage, but the same fucking monitor screens can be spotted repeatedly throughout the film. I don't care what anyone has to say about this film in terms of effects, because a good chunk of it was pretty lazy. However, I cannot deny that about 90% of this film, for the most part, is fucking beautiful. During production of this film, they mentioned there would be use of practical effects. Well, it clearly doesn't show in any way, shape, or form with the monsters anyway. Set pieces, sure, but monsters, not at all. Not a single bit of it seemed practical. Not even Ghidorah's supposed motion capture. Not exactly sure why they did motion capture in the first place when they could have made a practical costume for the 3 actors. The only bit I could even say is practical is Rodan in certain shots, because my god, was he the only good monster effect I could even notice. Even Godzilla himself was sometimes disappointing. He disappears for half of the movie and then needs to be revived for round 2. Now, sure, there are a lot of great shots that look amazing and a few moments where the CG does hold up, but it's standard at best, and it's really disappointing. And before anyone comments, you could still enjoy or even like a movie with flaws or imperfections. I just so happen to point out a lot in this film. Like I've said before, I liked this movie, and I don't necessarily hate it, but I'm going to point out every single flaws that have already happened. Now that brings me to one final thing about King of the Monsters. Michael Dougherty and Zach Shields, specifically when it came to the writing of this film. And by God, it's a disaster. They both worked with each other on Krampus, and that film had its fair share of mixed reviews. But that's not what worried me the first time around when it came to the production of this movie. It was Michael Dougherty himself. I was very hesitant about the choice they made to make him the director and writer for this movie. Mainly because I thought Krampus was okay, but not exactly good enough as a movie that didn't really push enough boundaries for a horror film. And many of the characteristics in Krampus had clearly passed over into this movie as well. Really stupid characters, inconsistent writing, fucked up motivations, the characters are bruised at best, decent humor at best, and the over-the-top moments that are either cringy or don't make sense. Like I said before, craft and passion can only get you so far if the writing isn't any good. Michael Dougherty may be a passionate artist in his vision, but he really needs to improve his writing. And before you even comment, who the fuck are you to say? Simple. A Godzilla fan myself, a growing filmmaker in craft and also writing. I've learned a lot when it comes to writing, and I'm still learning. I have the right to critique how I see it, and I'm able to point out the flaws with artists if they are obvious enough and that everyone else can clearly point them out objectively. Those who are masters at writing are one thing with their craft, but Michael Dougherty is no master, and nobody is perfect. Neither am I. I'm not entitled, so fuck off. And with the way things are going for Godzilla vs. Kong, I don't have that much faith for that film either. Now, to be fair for Michael Dougherty, he himself is a Godzilla fan, and it really does show. His passion and craft is well done, and he does at the very least have competence. Thankfully, he's not along the lines of, say, Ryan Johnson. Like his film Krampus, I can admit that that he was trying to have fun with this movie, and it clearly shows. It was really entertaining when it needed to be, and it moved along just fine. For the most part. There are moments in this film that are genuinely well done and crafted, although the good in this film can barely outweigh the bad. Again, I am not trying to bash the shit out of this movie or Michael Dougherty himself, although I still have to point out everything that is wrong, needing some fixes, and everything that can be improved upon in the next film. Everything that is done well in this movie is done well, obviously. And I forgot to mention this during the actual review, but they've name-dropped King Kong so many fucking times in this to the point where I thought they were going to show footage of him on Skull Island while this apocalypse was happening. Actual deleted footage does exist, and it probably should have served as a mid-credit scene rather than the newspaper montage that wasn't all that exciting. They even reused footage from Skull Island that was in the actual movie itself. Not what was recorded by the characters, but what was actually shown in the film. Same thing with the stock footage featured earlier in the film with the 2014 Godzilla. That's just lazy. It's even more ridiculous when there are digital files, photos, videos, and references being pulled up at the ready so conveniently. And it was even more disappointing to show all of the Titans attack on a flat screen or showing a map with nothing but red dots glowing. That's just dumb. If you're going to include this many monsters, then show them. Make a fucking montage of the world being destroyed by these monsters. Not a montage that shows only 3 of them and then the rest resort to a fucking glowing red dot. Show, don't tell. Speaking of which, what would have improved this movie very significantly is the oxygen destroyer, as I mentioned. Rather than having it as a random throwaway that had no build-up and no mention other than just the scene it was in, it should have been the MacGuffin of this film. Have it be built up as this weapon that will kill Godzilla. Have the story revolve around this device, not the fucking orca. The oxygen destroyer would have been a better reason for Dad's motivations of getting rid of it. Mother's motivations would have been done better around this device also. Maybe as a certain goal to kill Godzilla out of revenge. Maybe she wants to use it for a different reason no one expected. I don't know. I'm only giving suggestions. It could have acted as a race against time for Mothra to go against the military or something along those lines. At least something other than a terrible throwaway, because that's how they treat this device. And the only significance the orca has proven was to only awaken the Titans, because it never once had any effect on Godzilla. And if this device was used for the reason to tie into Godzilla vs. King Kong for the sake of determining who is the true alpha, then fucking hell, this series is fucked. At a glance, this idea is interesting and ties everything together really well, but then how the fuck do you explain the other half of the monsterverse? If this was the case, then why hasn't Godzilla attacked Skull Island within the span of 60 years? The apex predator idea from the last film is thrown out the window completely, and instead we have more of a focus on the true alpha. Godzilla doesn't even appear until 2014 when the Mutos decide to start fucking and end the world. How the fuck have any of these other Titans not waken up since then, or beforehand? How come they don't have any effect against Godzilla, other than they just pussy out of the fight easily and bow down to whoever's supposedly in charge? Hell, why do they bow down so easily? Motherfucker, there's a fucking Muto at the end of this movie and it bows. The first damn movie sure as hell contradicts this, because the first Mutos only wanted to procreate and survive, yet they don't fucking bow to Godzilla. I guess continuity is something Godzilla will still have to suffer for. Also, on a side note, can we please just stop with the family being broken apart or being put into danger cliche? Because it does not in any way make a good story in these big Hollywood films anymore. It's overused and it's cliche. Come up with something else. Jaws did it better, and so did Jurassic Park. Stop copying those films. And as I mentioned before about the opening credits, they saved that for the end to have a little more world building for the next film and possible future projects. I fucking hated that. Not the tiny details, not the cool references, and especially not the kick-ass score by Bear McCree, but the fucking execution and placement of this is what bothers me. It's annoying that this sequence alone was leading up to the Godzilla vs. King Kong reveal, rather than having some form of footage. And the post-credit scene has nothing to do with the next film. It's teasing a non-existent movie, one that's more than likely not going to happen at all. They should have done this sequence at the beginning in order to give off a better exposition through montage editing. Both Skull Island and 2014 have done it, so should this one. As a matter of fact, every film should do this. Not necessarily to give exposition, but to get you hyped up for the movies you're about to watch. Now we just have movies that just start right off without anything, not even a title, until the very ending. And when it comes to characters, there is no excuse of the Godzilla tradition with characters, because guess what? If this argument everyone's been going on about was 100% true, no questions asked, every Godzilla film would be fucked. But believe me, I can pull out a great many characters from different films. For example, Dr. Serizawa from the original 1954 Gojira, and these two films. Bryan Cranston from 2014. Yuri from GMK, her father and her supposed boyfriend. The family from Godzilla 2000. Akane, who pilots Kiryu in the Millennium series. The telekinetic girl from the Heisei series. The Prime Minister in various films. Wazaki from Final Wars. The Exilians, the Keylocks, and various other humanoid aliens Emergence, and motherfucking Don Fry from Final Wars. Those are a handful of characters every G fan should know. Not necessarily by name, I myself forget names most of the time, but from how they stand out amongst the rest. And believe me, if these characters were not written, performed, or even presented the way they were, those Godzilla films would suffer drastically on a major part. Are there more human characters that stand out in the franchise? Definitely. These are just a few I could think of for this review. But yet again, if the story, character motivations, and writing do not hold up, your film is fucked, regardless of performances and regardless of spectacle. And to add on to the human characters not being relevant, allow me to draw your attention to the Abomination series that should never have existed from Netflix, the anime trilogy. These 3 films are terrible movies, and Godzilla films on every level. Spectacle, effects, and music could not even carry these films if they tried, and not even Godzilla himself. The characters in those films are boring, bland, one-dimensional, and their motivations are often basic and make no sense when the series ends. This series should be an example of how not to make a Godzilla movie, let alone a movie in general. Aside from 98, but that's for another time, and for the sake of argument, I actually like that movie, believe it or not. While we're at it, I think I've watched 98 more than any other Godzilla film next to GMK. That statement on its own from a Godzilla fan says a lot. And on another note, in January of last year, 2018, they had test screenings for this movie, and they had to eventually do reshoots afterwards. And you want to know what the major complaints were? The human characters, the story, and the plot. And because of those complaints, they had to do reshoots. But going off of that information, I honestly feel sorry for the people who had to watch the movie then, because whatever they saw, some of it slipped out, and I don't even believe even half of the movie was fixed from those reshoots. Which is another thing to add on to my worry for the choice of Michael Dougherty for this film, and also continuing work on Godzilla vs. Kong. Was he chosen because of the fact that he featured a Jaeger figure in the background of Krampus? As a moviegoer, I can't blame Rotten Tomatoes for giving King of the Monsters this score, but then again, Rotten Tomatoes has been fucked these past couple months with critics and audience alike, not to mention their own stupidity during the Captain Marvel cascade. So who the fuck cares what these critics have to say at this point? Not to mention, who considers using Rotten Tomatoes scores before watching a movie? That's just silly. Watch the movie and then decide for yourself. I did that for King of the Monsters. And on another note, I have to clear up. It's not just the critics. There are other people and Godzilla fans alike who did not like this movie, which is why I made the little montage at the beginning of this review of various YouTubers. And as I mentioned before at the beginning of part 1, 2, it is so goddamn sad the way the Godzilla fanbase has been. Not just attacking professional critics, but other reviewers and moviegoers alike. While I'm one for trashing and tearing professional critics and Rotten Tomatoes a new one, but trashing actual moviegoers, the audience, and actual people who have legitimate arguments, I'm against. Cordary Effects is a perfect example. He uploaded his review of King of the Monsters, and a week later, it was taken down.
For those who are wondering, over the past week, yeah, it's been 1 week, the Godzilla review was live for about 2 days, and the backlash it got was insane. I still stand by a lot of what I said. There's a whole bunch of stuff in the review that, while I was editing it, I kept thinking to myself, like, God, I could explain this point better. Oh, I think I'm like, this part's just a bit ridiculous. Maybe I should re-record it. But while making this review, it was kind of like, there is no time for change. I just need to get this review finished and up. The other issue is, it's a movie review, so it has to be current and it has to be out now. But yeah, the Godzilla review, I have to address why I took it down. No, it wasn't because the dislikes were racing to match the likes. This is an instance where 50% I still stand by my guns on a lot of stuff I said in it. And now the 50% is, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of criticism that I agree with. One of them was that I am not a Godzilla fan, meaning I'm not familiar with the material. Not saying I hate it. Like I said in the review, I didn't go in with any bias against the character.
I wasn't the biggest fan of his review, believe me, but what he said needed to be said, and he brought forth a convincing argument as to why King of the Monsters was a bad movie. But no, let's trash talk an outsider for their own opinion on something we all love. To think the Godzilla fanbase wouldn't be toxic than compared to something like Star Wars is now beyond me. Actually, never mind. The Star Wars fanbase is pretty fucking terrible. Yeah, sure, there are a lot of great Godzilla fans who know when to stop, but my god, does the bad outweigh the good. The way you act as a Godzilla fan, you're representing the fandom. And I have my way of doing it as of the 6 years now on this channel and outside of that. Now, is this to say I'm bashing in the Godzilla fanbase? Absolutely not, because that would be hypocritical of me. I'm simply saying to do better, or rather more specifically, just be a decent fucking human being. The same was being said over and over again by everyone. Human characters are shit. The plot is shit. The motivations are shit. The attempt at building a universe in one movie was shit. Exposition was shit. And the build-ups and payoffs were shit. But at least the monsters were the best part of this entire film, thank God. No one will care if they're going to be frustrated with a major aspect of the film before the main events. The human characters you are stuck with for the movie, just like how I was. And once again, the excuse of you only go to see these movies just for the monster fights doesn't work, because that would be saying you only go see Jaws for the shark, or you only go see Jurassic Park for the dinosaurs, or even worse, you just watch Star Wars for the space battles and fights. Do you have any idea how many shark movies were made following that one rule? And do you realize that Jurassic Park went down that route with these pieces of shit? And do you realize how god-awful Star Wars could have been if it followed the same thing? There are plenty of Star Wars ripoffs that have failed miserably on that argument. The same applies to Godzilla. Nobody wants this to happen to the big G. And you have to remember that the original Godzilla wasn't 100% about Godzilla himself. It was a well-executed political message about the atomic bombings on Japan and the horrors it brought. That film also dedicated a significant amount of time to its characters and what they represent and what they were going through, and to a great amount to the story. Now, that's a film on how you do politics in your movie. Now, are there people who legitimately don't give a shit and watch movies for their spectacle? Oh, absolutely. And are there people who don't give a shit about my entire argument and just go to a movie just for the action parts, or for the monsters, or for the cool parts, or for just for the spectacle? Absolutely. And I'm not saying it's wrong for people to do that. I'm not saying no one can enjoy a movie that's bad. And I'm not saying you can't watch a movie for specific moments. What I am saying is, if you're only going to watch a movie for specific moments of a spectacle, you can easily look up those moments online and watch them without having to be bogged down with the rest of the movie you want to ignore. That argument of its own almost takes away defense for just about any bad movie, and maybe even the most brilliant films. And more specifically, this film especially. The hypocrisy of Rotten Tomatoes between 2014 and King of the Monsters, I agree with, because everyone who's worked on King of the Monsters actually listened to the overall complaint of there not being enough Godzilla in a Godzilla movie. That argument I agree with, but to say that King of the Monsters is a good movie is a bit of an overstatement, because there is a lot more than just, it's a Godzilla movie for a fucking reason. People bitch too much because there wasn't enough Godzilla. Get the fuck over yourself, you brain-dead degenerates. The biggest issues I've had with this film was the fact that it broke its realism so many times that it took away all plausibility completely. The previous film already established that this monsterverse is taking place in modern times. So how exactly they managed to be this advanced with 17 outposts around the fucking world is beyond me. And don't even get me started on the Auction and Destroyer. Shut the fuck up. And how the hell are they planning to top off Godzilla vs. Kong compared to what just happened is beyond me. You really mean to tell me Kong is going to be more challenging than King Ghidorah? I don't think so. So now, what would I give this film? Well, before I talk anymore and give it a fucking C it rightfully deserves, unlike my original grade, a solid B-. The same grade as Venom. Reason being is because this film was specifically made for the fans, made to be pure action, and also a way to put passion into what is most important, the monsters. But once again, putting effort, passion, and craft into one thing and having everything else as an afterthought is not always the most ideal, and it gets you nowhere. The story, plot, motivations, writing, humor, world building, and characters were a major letdown, and no matter how hard you try, you cannot ignore something that takes up more than half of the movie. Fan service is another thing, and it means absolutely nothing. I said it before, and I'll repeat myself. Just because it's a Godzilla film, it is not an excuse for being a lazy movie. If past Godzilla movies could do it, then so should these films. You need to write a halfway good film in order to make sense, be entertaining, and carry the film, regardless of the movie. But as a Godzilla movie, like I said before, it's fucking awesome, and it's clear that passion and effort was put into this film, even if it is a terrible movie in general. That statement all on its own may seem contradictory, but I make that claim for the very specific reason I discussed about a movie in general and as a Godzilla movie, both as a moviegoer and a fan. Despite everything I've said pointing out what was wrong with this movie, I still enjoyed it, and I find it to be a good step in the right direction for this monsterverse given the right amount of effort is put into it and legitimate care. But believe me and others alike, no matter how much effort you put into it, nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, could ever fix these ungrateful fucks.
Holy fuck, is this wrong?
Just wanted to give a quick shout out at the end of this to everyone who subscribed to me within the past few months. I've never seen my channel have this much growth in ages, and I really appreciated it. So to all of you who have subscribed to me, welcome aboard, and thank you all so much for that growth from my recent video back in May. It's the most popular on my channel, and I am very happy it has gotten this much attention. But once again, holy shit, 600 of you is a lot of people to handle and to really think about that many people. Thank you all so much. I'll catch you crazy fuckers later. More content will be on the way. We're on a journey to the end.